What if I told you that the biggest obstacle standing between your organization and extraordinary performance isn't a lack of talent? It's leadership. Not bad leadership. Good leadership. Leadership from people who work hard, care deeply, and genuinely want their organizations to succeed. I know that's a bold statement, but after more than 19 years working in emergency medical services, organizational leadership, and state government, I've come to believe something that changed the way I think about leadership forever. I don't believe organizations have a talent problem. I believe they have an obstacle problem. And more often than we'd like to admit, the obstacle is us. Welcome to the Clear Leadership Podcast. I'm Jaime, and my mission is simple: to help leaders remove the obstacles that prevent people and organizations from achieving extraordinary results. Over the years, I've worked with incredibly talented people who were smart, dedicated, innovative, people who genuinely wanted to make things better. Yet something curious kept happening. The longer they stayed in an organization, the quieter they became. Not because they stopped caring, not because they lacked ideas, but because somewhere along the way, they learned a lesson no organization ever intends to teach. Wait until someone tells you what to do. That bothered me, because I knew these people. I knew what they were capable of. So, I began asking myself a question. What causes talented people to stop acting like leaders? That question eventually led me to the CLEAR framework. But before I explain CLEAR, I want to tell you a story. A few years ago, I was part of the management team responsible for updating a series of operational process guidelines. This wasn't theoretical work. These were the documents that guided how work was actually performed in the field. As a management team, we brought years of first-hand operational experience to the table. We'd seen what worked, what didn't, where processes created unnecessary frustration, where improvements could make a real difference. We challenged each other's thinking, debated ideas, listened to different perspectives. Our goal wasn't simply to rewrite documents. It was to make the work better for our team doing it every day. Then every document followed the same path. Before anything could be finalized, it had to be reviewed and often substantially edited by a senior leader. Now, to be fair, this leader genuinely wanted the organization to succeed. The intent wasn't to slow us down. The intent was to ensure quality and consistency. And honestly, some of those edits genuinely improved the final product. Good leaders often add value. But over time, something happened that none of us expected. The conversations within our management team began to change. Instead of asking, "What's the best process for the people doing this work?" we started asking, "What changes do you think we will be allowed to make?" Think about that shift. We had stopped designing for the people we served. We had started designing for the person approving the work. No one announced that change. No one intended for it to happen. But it happened anyway. Control quietly replaced ownership. Expertise became secondary to approval, and eventually I realized something that has stayed with me ever since. The moment people begin designing work to satisfy the approver instead of serving the customer, whomever that may be, innovation has already begun to die. Not because people stop caring, because the system quietly teaches them that permission matters more than initiative. That experience forced me to ask a different question. Not, how can leaders make better decisions? But, how can leaders create an environment where great decisions no longer depend on them? The leadership problem. Nobody wants to admit. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most micromanagers don't believe they're micromanagers. They believe they're protecting quality, reducing risk, supporting the team, staying informed. And sometimes they're right. But leadership isn't defined by intentions. Leadership is defined by the behaviors our actions create in others. If every important decision comes back to one person, people stop deciding. If every project requires another approval, people stop taking initiative. If every idea gets rewritten, people eventually stop offering ideas. That's not because your people lack capability. It's because they've adapted to the system you've created. And people always adapt to the system. A different way to think about leadership. For decades, we've celebrated leaders who have all the answers. The smartest person in the room, the decisive executive, the problem solver. But what if we've been measuring leadership the wrong way? What if leadership isn't about having all the answers? What if it's about building organizations where the answers no longer depend on you? I believe great leaders aren't remembered because they made every decision. They're remembered because they developed people who could. Leadership isn't about becoming indispensable. It's about making yourself progressively less necessary for the day-to-day decisions that others are fully capable of making. That's not losing control. That's multiplying leadership. That realization became the beginning of what I now call the CLEAR framework. Not because the world needed another leadership acronym. It doesn't. The world has enough leadership theories. What it needs are leaders who understand that their greatest responsibility isn't directing people. It's removing the obstacles that prevent people from succeeding. CLEAR is built on 5 principles. Clarify purpose. People cannot commit to a mission they don't understand. Leverage potential. Every organization has more talent than it's currently using. Empower ownership. People don't grow when every decision requires permission. Align systems. Great people cannot consistently outperform broken systems. And finally, realize results. Leadership isn't measured by effort. It's measured by outcomes. Those 5 ideas aren't separate. They work together. Purpose creates direction. People create momentum. Ownership creates commitment. Systems create consistency. Results create credibility. I'd like to leave you with a challenge. Tomorrow morning, before you open your email, before your first meeting, before your first decision, ask yourself one question. What obstacle can I remove today that will help someone else succeed? Maybe it's a meeting that no longer needs to exist. Maybe it's an unnecessary approval. Maybe it's finally trusting someone with a decision they've already earned the right to make. You don't always have to do more to become a better leader. Sometimes, you simply have to remove what's getting in the way. This week's CLEAR challenge is simple. Sit down with 3 members of your team. Ask them 2 questions. What's the biggest obstacle that makes your job harder than it should be? Then ask, if you were in my position, what would you change first? Then do something that's much harder. Listen. Don't defend the process. Don't explain why things are the way they are. Just listen, because the people closest to the work are often closest to the solution. I'd like to leave you with this thought. For years, we've admired leaders who could solve every problem. I think it's time we admire leaders who create organizations where problems don't wait for one person to solve them. Because leadership isn't measured by how much control you maintain. It's measured by how much capability you create in others. That's the philosophy behind CLEAR, and it's the journey we'll take together on this podcast. Next time, we'll begin with the first pillar of the CLEAR framework. Clarify purpose. Because people cannot follow a vision they've never truly heard. Until then, lead with purpose. Develop people, remove obstacles, create ownership, build systems that help people succeed, and never forget, leadership isn't about becoming indispensable. It's about making others successful. I'm Jaime. Until next time, lead clearly.